good evening, and thanks for tuning in to our installment this evening in the ongoing series of presentations on often the life, and particularly, unfortunately, the death of Kurt Cobain, the godhead of grunge. And as usual, lots of news to relate about the matter at hand. That news being at this particular time, if you did watch cable TV tonight, the fact that, the bands, the musicians who are in question in these matters are being more amply rewarded, of course, as one might expect, in the context of our broad thesis, more well rewarded than any other musicians of their day. That is, if you tuned in the MTV Music Awards, what you saw almost immediately after the program began was, the world's top-selling a recording artist, according to some. They said that she's sold some 80 million records in recent years, Mariah Carey, handing off an award to for the best new band video to the boys of Foo Fighters, that offshoot band from Nirvana, a band which certainly has not sold even 5% of the 80 million records of the presenter, and yet there was that pop music luminary handing off the award to the boys of Foo. And not a lot to report in terms of their acceptance speech. It was actually rather strange in as much as it was a bit uncomfortable and odd, in as much as you had Dave the Foo saying that he wanted to see, he was hoping that people would see this as some sort of a closure, which is, the typical sort of psycho jargon, psychological jargon that we're used to seeing from those in the Nirvana Incorporated camp. That is, they have their own hip psychological jargon to explain most phenomena. And in this case, he wanted closure, and then there was sort of an uncomfortable pause, and then he indicated, what he was really referring to was, of course, that he wanted closure on this whole matter of people throwing Mentos mints up at the band, presumably while they were performing. So you get the idea. The idea is that, typical nonsense in the world of rock and roll, where you have, Barbie doll Tabitha Soren and Ken doll Kurt Loder presiding over an award ceremony that goes on and on for like 5 or 6 hours with all of the attendant video add-ons. And most ironically and most strangely, I don't know how it's been in previous years, but excuse me, at this time, for this award ceremony, they had the logo for MTV News all over the sets and everything else, trying to play up the fact that there was this really heavy news element going on at this MTV award ceremony, which if you asked any casual observer of MTV News who's not in the media industry, I'm sure that most of your perceptive viewers would say that, in fact, MTV News represents the worst of commercialization of the news by, in this case, a particular industry. And not only that, but of course, at this particular time, they look worse than ever in terms of, as we've described previously, not only is MTV News in the position of reporting news as the music industry sees it, which is problematic enough, but MTV News is also reporting the news as the worst elements in the music industry would like them to report it when it comes to very disturbing cases like the death of Kurt Cobain and the death, most recently, of Jonathan Melvoin. You may have seen me referring to this item here, which is the Rolling Stone that came out more or less yesterday. And, I could pick over the details of it, but strangely enough, they've gotten a relative, Wendy Melvoin, his sister, to sort of almost play into the music industry's desire to have a relative rat the guy out. She says that she had no idea. It was a complete surprise to her, but at the same time, I guess he had dabbled in drugs before. Strangely and ironically, dabbled being precisely the term that Kurt Cobain used to describe the limited extent of his drug use to the Los Angeles Times in 1992. So you had Wendy Melvoin, who herself is in the music industry, explaining that, he had dabbled, so it wasn't an absolute surprise, but basically still a complete surprise. Her father, who is even more deeply in the music industry as a former chairman of NARAS, the music organization, the music industry organization, National Association of Recording Arts and Sciences, is apparently still not signing on to this verdict on his son as more or less a heroin suicide. And of course, the strangest thing, even as MTV News is reporting that case most recently, is that they've added on that, this was not just a heroin overdose, because people find that so implausible since he was not a reputed heroin user up until yesterday. The Rolling Stones come up with some dirt that they claim is legit that would demonstrate that someone out there knew he was using. But the idea is that the MTV News is now reporting that it was an alcohol and heroin overdose. That is a heroin usage complicated by the use of alcohol, which is extremely difficult to understand. You can understand that if they're looking for some sort of, midway plausible explanation as to what happened to this guy in a New York, in a posh New York hotel room, why he OD'd under those circumstances, they sort of use this in terms of saying, well, you see, what happened was that he wasn't a habitual narcotics user, and therefore he made the fatal mistake of mixing alcohol and a usage of heroin, which may have been relatively modest, but the deadly combination of the two is what did the novice heroin user in, you see, which is plausible, I suppose, if he was there alone. But of course, the whole problem is, of course, that he wasn't alone. He was there with one Jimmy Chamberlin of that same Smashing Pumpkins band, who has been, at least in print in Rolling Stone, a pretty hardcore heroin user since at least, it was reported in 1994, that he has been having a very severe problem with that drug. And isn't it the first thing that all heroin users and wannabe heroin users find out, is that you don't mix those two drugs, alcohol and that narcotic heroin, because of the extremely great likelihood of a fatal overdose. And yet he did not impart this information to the novice drug user in the room, the novice heroin user in the room, if that's the way it really happened, you see. So the explanations that we're receiving are more or less, as we've stated before, they are explanations that look plausible in the press to people who are not well informed, but as far as an actual basis of reality in which to examine, the mysterious unexplained death of a person who by all accounts should not have died. He was, a happy fellow with a child who was only 3 or 4 months old at the time. So, is this really a candidate for heroin overdose suicide? I really think not. But in any case, that is the explanation, which is spelled out in great length in Rolling Stone in this week's edition, the one that's just out. And, if you needed a premise as to why, let's say, for instance, just as a possibility, let's just say that if you're looking for a short list of suspects, among those that you would have to first consider would be the band itself, the band, right? I mean, they're the ones that are involved in all of the intimate business transactions, etc., of this individual. So if you're looking for some sort of a relationship that might spell out murder, you would look at the multi-million-dollar rock and roll band, and what exactly might be their motive? After all, there must be a motive. Well, here's a good motive for you. Is this millions of dollars worth of publicity, or what? I mean, not only does he get his photo in the darn magazine, he gets his photo in the magazine, what is that, 17 times in 2 pages, and undoubtedly he's pictured elsewhere as well. So, you know, you get your picture 17, 18 or more times in a national magazine like this. That's not just casual publicity. That's $1 million in free publicity. And really, I don't think that there can be any doubting that that's precisely what it is. And that's just in the short term. That's just one magazine article. In the long term, it gives this guy who has a product on the market now called, what is it, Infinite Melancholy and Self-Possessed Sadness, something along those terms, along those lines. Well, you know, you just wonder why this guy that, you know, made his $1 million in his 20s, early 20s as far as I know, has so much to be infinitely sad and melancholy about. And now, well, there's this whole drama that Mr. Billy Pumpkinhead can spell out ad nauseum for years and years to all the reporters that will line up to ask him the same lame questions about it. He's created a whole situational drama around his band. And this MTV Music Awards tonight was precisely that sort of thing. That is, that they did, in fact, you know, belabor this drama with, you know, News Barbie Tabitha Soren really keenly interested in what they had to say. And of course, it was all ridiculous. And the easiest way of capsulizing what Billy Pumpkinhead had to say is that Billy Pumpkinhead was completely and utterly and offensively unapologetic about what had happened. That is, you know, this Jonathan Melvoin, up until yesterday, the reputation was that this was some sort of a freak accident, something which definitely should not have happened. But in the broadcast tonight, what you had was Billy Pumpkinhead spelling out that these guys had been screwing up over and over again and playing his little hard-assed boss character and you know, merely putting the blame on Mr. Chamberlain, who's, you know, been criminally charged with possession, and the dead man, Melvoin. Absolutely no expressions of remorse or grief toward his family or anyone else, and absolutely no sense that this was any sign of any shortcoming in his role as that leader of that particular band, which, you know, obviously, as they spelled out, the boss of a corporation is not necessarily responsible for all of the actions of its employees, but this is a very small corporation, and this is not merely someone getting fired, which is the way it's being portrayed in the press. It is, in fact, the controlled substances homicide. You know, one member of his band is guilty, in my estimation, and I think in the letter of the law, of controlled substances homicide upon another member of his band. And of course, we go into this at depth because of the obvious connections to the Cobain case and the curious similarities also. And in any case, we've done these sort of long impromptu monologues on the call-in program the last several times, so let's try to make it true to form here this evening and get in a few telephone calls from listeners, and let's keep our fingers crossed that the more demented of listeners will stay off the lines. And of course, obviously, if you're one of the less demented listeners, we certainly invite your participation with great enthusiasm. And let's just jump in here with both feet and give it a try. Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. How's it going?
All right, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm the guy representing all the stoners from Darien.
All right,
We have
okay.
a Kurt No-Brain question. We want to know if that's like one eyebrow or two. Could you let me know?
One eyebrow or two.
Is that, you got one eyebrow or two? Because I can't tell from here.
Hey, how old are you, by the way?
How old am I?
Yeah.
About 13.
Yeah. Really? Well, in that case, we'll give you a grow up, young man, do it quick because you're making a fool of yourself, and be done with it. Obviously, if he had been of legal age, we would have had harsher words for that person, but, you know. Don't want to be accused of beating up on the kiddies on the call-in show here. And we've got an engineer crawling around on the floor because obviously the feedback is not my fault, it's TCI's fault. But we're going to try to jump in with another call-in presentation here. And let's see, we've got an engineer behind us. Hey, you had your 5 seconds of fame, man. Congratulations. Are we all done with that now? Okay, give it a try, feedback and all.
Yeah, I'm glad I got through.
Okay, super. And
Yeah, I had a question.
okay, super.
Are you aware of the rock group The Mentors?
No, I'm not. What about them?
Well, I heard rumors that the lead singer of The Mentors, his name's El Duce, and this was in High Times.
Oh, that, right, yeah.
He was supposed to be paid like $50,000 to off Kurt Cobain by Courtney Love.
Right,
I only heard rumors of it. I never had a chance to pick up the magazine.
right.
And I was wondering if you could expound on that for me.
Sure. Well, there's some. It was in the High Times, and actually, the High Times was published before, as far as I recall, before this El Duce guy. Actually, as far as I recall, took a lie detector test, which was administered by Robert Shapiro's favorite lie detector expert in Los Angeles. And, you know, we don't want to make too much of this El Duce guy, because if you've seen a photo of him, he looks like one of the more disreputable characters, even in rock and roll.
Have you ever heard any of their music?
Oh, no, I didn't know. They're actually good?
Oh, they're great.
Really? Because, I mean, the band was described, I think they described themselves as a porno rock band.
Rape rock, that's what
Rape rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, so I didn't have a whole lot of confidence that spending $13.99 on a CD...
Well, he is the kind of guy that would do that, though.
That would kill somebody for money?
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. See, what he said was he was on tour, so he couldn't do it. And that's why my friend told me about this. We're big fans of the Mentors.
Oh, really? Well, why would you be fans of a rock band that would have somebody in it who would be a murderer for hire?
Well, because, I don't know, they're great. I mean, that doesn't have anything to... I was in them before I found anything about that. You know, I didn't know anything about that when I first got into the Mentors.
Right. Well, in any case, just to give you the short description on the most interesting aspect about that is that I don't recall his name at this moment, but I'm certain that he is the polygraph expert that Robert Shapiro hired to quiz O.J. Shortly after O.J. was arrested and then released. And this is the famous polygraph test that only has come to light in recent months that Shapiro set up and then foolishly, I guess, because O.J. flunked the lie detector. And this guy is supposedly one of the best in the country, and he, as far as I understand the story, this El Duce guy passed the lie detector test.
Really?
Passed.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing because flunking one is kind of an iffy, you know, maybe you flunk because you're lying, and maybe you flunk because, you know, you just don't register well on these lie detector tests. But passing? I mean, this guy is not exactly James Bond or anything. He's a singer in a porno rock band.
Yeah.
I doubt that he has the expertise to fool the polygraph, you know.
You never know.
Well, but this guy is one of the best people in the nation. So that polygraph test seems to be, I mean, if there were an effort and an indictment of Courtney Love, that it would seem to be...
You know what's funny was supposedly, you know, he was going to be paid $50,000 by Courtney Love to do this.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it because he was on tour. But, you know, I have questions about whether the Mentors pulling $50,000 on tour, you know, if they pull in even half that. Now, if it was up to me, they'd pull in, you know, $1 million because I'm a big fan.
Okay, but do understand that he didn't take any action to fulfill that offer by Courtney Love. The most interesting thing about it isn't that he did anything about it, but that the offer was made in the first place.
Yeah.
And actually, just to touch on what my general theory is about that, you've seen photos of this guy, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
He's very strange looking. He'd be the last guy that you'd want to send into the
for a
Denny
large-
Blaine neighborhood
For a
to
big portion
perform.
of his career, they hid their faces with executioner hoods, but then they showed he's bald and he has a beard.
Right, okay, so he used to wear an executioner hood earlier in his career. That's kind of my point, which is this would be the strangest and least reliable sort of hitman to send in to do this sort of a crime. So why would Courtney Love, if she did in fact do it, if this polygraph examination is all legit and this is this character relating something that actually occurred, why would she do that? And the best theory that I can come up with on that, which is the one that's perfectly obvious, is that, as I've been saying, the murder of Kurt Cobain served a lot of corporate interests of people who certainly do not want to be in any way implicated in the death of someone famous and beloved. And so it seems to me that a lot of Courtney Love's behavior since the time of the death, her erratic and violent behavior, etc., and even this incident which allegedly occurred before Kurt Cobain's death, is all in the way of creating an alibi, not for Courtney Love, but creating an alibi for everyone in the background of Courtney Love. You see, she's the patsy. She's the fall guy, or the fall gal, if you will.
Think so?
And the idea is that she creates this huge trail of controversy, which is never even examined by the major media. And then for anyone to step forward and say, not only is she possibly involved in his death, but all of these people in the background of this mafia-tied corporation are also potentially involved in his death. That's precisely the sort of thing that's never going to make it onto the Ken and Barbie news on MTV, because of course they're not going to acknowledge all of the psychologically prevalent characteristics of Courtney Love that would make her a likely candidate for a person involved in a murder-for-hire scheme. So they're certainly not going to get involved in examining the corporate background of people in the entertainment industry and how that particular corporate background and links to organized crime might have something to do with the idea of this rising young star, the brightest star in the corporation, getting whacked at a particular time which was most advantageous to those who will seek to market his oeuvre in the near future and for the next 50 years.
Well, tell me.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have to cut you off though. We want to give someone else a chance. Thanks very much.
Fuck off, metal.
What was that? Yes. Do we have another call? Hi. Do we have another caller?
Just me.
Okay. Only a few minutes now, so if you could make it quick.
Sure. I've enjoyed your program, but unfortunately I haven't been able to catch all of them. And I was wondering, is this going to be on a video disc or in the form of a book at some point?
That's an interesting question. All I can say is that I've done the work. As far as exploitation of it on a commercial basis, that's all up in the air. You know, I have not signed anything, and in a way, I hope that people can appreciate that the fact of doing it is the most important thing.
Oh, for sure.
Sure.
But for someone in my position who hasn't been able to catch all of your work and much of the effort that's gone into it,
Right.
It would be nice if videotapes or something were available to be able.
Right, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and what I can say is that the show has signed on for another 6 months, or we've more or less signed on. There's kind of a controversy about what time slot we're getting. We may not be on in the evening in the future. We may be on in the afternoon, unfortunately.
Well, there are always VCRs.
Right, exactly. So you can time the show, and presumably we will be doing more of these in the evening, the call-in programs. And what I can say to you is that as far as commercially exploiting this, there are lots of people out there that are looking to rip me off and commercially exploit it. It's probably they will go to press before I ever do. And that'll be a sad day. I mean, it makes me nauseous to even think about some guys in Toronto or Montreal, cashing in on all the work that I've done. But they're looking for the quickie exploitation, and what I've done, I think, is something more permanent, lasting, and significant here on the program. And so, but what I can tell you is go to a web terminal, look up on AOL's web crawler, look up the Kurt Cobain was murdered web page. All you have to do is key in web crawler Kurt Cobain, And there are about 3,500 documents, of which ours is now listed number 1. So if you go there, you will find a wealth of material that I'm sure will interest you greatly. Thanks for calling in. We're fresh out of time, and please tune in again, okay? And thanks for joining us, and please tune in again.
You're my favorite.